Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming, and welcome back again to more Vessel of Hatred. We've been playing that DLC a little bit early, so I'm able to come at you with a nice stepping stone build beyond your leveling build. If you're unaware, I made a leveling build for 1 to 60 and beyond for super fun and effective leveling while you're getting towards your endgame. The basis of that build was around Dance of Knives and actually using combo points thanks to a specific aspect, the Star Shards. That build gets you nicely into Torment 1, but some small adjustments and changes with this build here, as you can see, will get you to Torment 3. Torment 3 is going to be around the point where you're going to effectively farm your true endgame builds. But it's not quite a walk in the park as it used to be. So you need to have an effective build online to get there, to function there, and then really start to work on your true endgame build where you're going to start to dominate Torment 3 and in fact, hopefully move on to Torment 4 effectively. In the meantime, this is your stepping stone build, happily getting you to Torment 3 effectively with insane burst potential and hilarious ability to hard CC and stagger bosses constantly, leading to some very spiky damage. Just like the leveling build, it's super fun to play, but yeah, there are some pretty key adjustments, from aspects to what tempers you're actually going to run, but it is still leaning on combo points and sticking with momentum, because in this stepping stone build, you'll be able to do the ladder bosses, which means you're going to be able to get your hands on Bolt's Will. This gives you a massive damage bonus while you're unstoppable, and we have 3 ways to do that that are going to be consistent to the point where this is always going. Momentum itself has changed as a key passive slightly. It allows you to generate these stacks with cutthroat channeled skills like specifically Dance of Knives. Because we're not using any marksman skills then, we permanently are at 10 stacks and enjoy damage reduction, movement speed, and increased damage. Combine that with a stolen vigor aspect then, and this means every 8 seconds, you'll become unstoppable for 3 seconds. The Bolt's Will provides its damage bonus while you're unstoppable for those 3 seconds, and then for 5 seconds after. So 8 seconds of damage buff, while Stolen Vigor resets every 8 seconds. It is absolutely incredible synergy, and it's a big part of why we're doing so much damage. So obviously this unique is going to be pretty important. You might be wondering then, what happened to Victimize, which was an absolutely insane core of many rogue builds, and especially Dance of Knives in the PTR? Well, it has been changed, and they've now revealed that in the patch notes. As you can see, it's changed in a few ways. A big one though is the effect now happens less frequently, but it will store up the damage of instances it would trigger for the next instance. And you can actually compare that to, say, Barber, the Barber Heart from Season 1. Yes, it's like that. Though they have slightly reduced its damage, it's still ridiculous. And then with something like Fists of Fate, which are going to give us that RNG aspect of making it hit harder, there's a lot of RNG in that build. You're still going to be going for the classic setup though, of freezing enemies and also poisoning them, committing to poison and your skills, and freezing based on your affixes, which is very gear dependent. This then is going to be the perfect build as a stepping stone to get you to that build, allowing you to get to Torment 3 and work effectively there, gearing up for that true endgame build and sort of transitioning to Victimize. That's why I really like combo points even now for this stepping stone build. With the new aspect, Star Shards, that's giving you an extra 3 charges to your maximum Dance of Knives skill, allowing you to spin for extended periods of time. The basic attack I'm still running because of that is Blade Shift, which is giving us 15% resistance to all elements while going, 20% movement speed, which is vital for actually maintaining Dance of Knives, and it lets you move through enemies, allowing you to get to the specific targets and press yourself against them that you need to kill, like those pesky purple shielding enemies or a specific elite. If you didn't know, they also changed Enhanced Blade Shift. The part where it allows you to refresh its duration by moving through an enemy means you can infinitely be in a Blade Shift, always enjoying that element resist, movement speed, and extending your Dance of Knives really long, as I've said. So around that, we're making use of Cold Imbue to hard stun and burst people down that are frozen, applying that freeze really effectively by just doing one extended Dance of Knives that's applying it to every enemy near you. Around classic options like Smoke Grenade and Shadow Clone for big burst and even more control, it feels incredible. This time though, I'll be showing you the kind of basis of the Paragon to work with and having more of a specific chat to do with runes. But yeah, let's explain this stepping stone build that's going to get you to Torment 3 with Rogue. Let's start with the specializations then. As I've shown, you're running combo points still like in the leveling build. That is because specifically you're running the Star Shards aspect, which is why this is relevant. It means Dance of Knives actually spends combo points, so that's vital. For the skill tree then, here's your fast rundown. We're taking Blade Shift as our combo point builder and all those other perks I've just explained with the element resist, move speed, moving for enemies, permanently keeping it up. It's amazing. And because of how quick you attack when you do it, you get 3 combo points basically instantly. On the next skill tree then, we have of course Maximize Sturdy for close damage reduction and Siphoning Strikes for the healing that provides. From ability, I go Shadow Step, just 1 point here. Here we maximize Dance of Knives, of course, taking it to Disciplined, giving it that chance to pierce, and also don't forget, every 30 meters you travel while channeling, it grants 4 more charges, so you want to be permanently moving when using this. For the passives here, you want to prioritize Weapon Mastery as usual. 3 out of 3 unstable elixirs means we get a nice stun and damage bonus when popping a healing potion. Great when we're going for a power damage spike. Trick attacks means we're getting more benefit from stunning enemies, as well as dazing them. And 1 point into Rapid Gambits means when we evade through targets, we can also daze them, which will trigger that. Also, we have 1 point into Rugged here, just to gain 9% damage reduction against damage over time effects. You will note in this footage that I have 66 points spent. That is because we're in the pre-launch version of the game, and on these saves, they did not give us our renown. So we're missing quite a lot of skill points in Paragon, but for this footage, it's only relevant for 4 points spent. Where would I put those 4 points? Well, I would put 2 points into Rapid Gambits and 2 points into Rugged. Moving down then, we have Dark Shroud, a well-known classic for the rogue class at this point. These shadows spin around you, providing you more and more damage reduction per active shadow. When enhanced, that gives us movement speed, which is very important, and also we get more critical strike chance while at least 1 shroud is active. We've got extra levels in it just to help with this, but it's vitally important you understand that Umbrus, the aspect, is how this is working. Critical strikes have a chance to generate the shadow. So because I've got this aspect equipped, I don't actually need this skill on my skill bar. But of course, you'll still need to commit to it in the skill tree. In any case, we also have 1 point into Smoke Grenade. The enhancement means the Smoke Grenade's a big damage bonus to those we apply it to. Countering means when you hit an elite or a boss, like multiple elites, it cuts the cooldown off by 5 seconds. And when you're hitting a pack of enemies with this, it allows you to repeatedly drop it down, building up a lot of CC. That's because it dazes enemies the moment you use it, which will also help build up stagger on a boss. Again, because we're using trick attacks, that's a damage increase. Otherwise, for passives here, it's the classic of Malice and Exploit, and also Agile for a bit of regular dodge chance. On the next area, we have the Imbuement, 1 point into Cold Imbuement. Enhanced and Mixed means it's a constant source of vulnerable, and we're doing massive damage to frozen enemies, especially when we get 3 out of 3 Frigid Finesse, which is a very important passive we'd love to have a bit of on our amulet, but I just don't. It's big damage to chilled and frozen enemies, basically. On the ultimate tree then, we have of course Shadow Clone, which we max out now, taking it all the way to Supreme to increase its damage and output. Also here you'll see Impetus, increasing ultimate skill damage after moving 15 meters. But while that damage bonus is ready, Agility and Subterfuge skills deal increased damage, and yes, Dance of Knives is an agility skill. Finally, the key passive, the all-important Momentum, specifically combined with Stolen Vigor, as I've explained. Next up then, it's time to talk Paragon. In the new Paragon boards, you have your starting board, and then you can extend it a total of 4 times, leaving you with 5 boards total. You'll note that I haven't got everything fully leveled up because I have 166 points right now. You're going to get more than that in the live version long term, allowing you to reach the final glyph and get that filled out. But I went as hard as I could to show you as far as I could. In any case, let's show the Paragon boards. For the first board, we have Versatility. This awesome effect is going to massively increase the damage you're dealing with non-basic and non-core skills. Dance of Knives is not a basic and it is not a core skill, so it's increasing that damage. You need 40 dexterity around that, which is easy to achieve on the starting board. Here's where I spend my points on the starting board to do that, min-maxing as effectively as I can to get as far as I can. But remember that getting extra max life and resistance to all elements is a very valuable thing if you have the points free right now. In any case, that's the first board, so we extend into the first board extension, which is Dance Macabre, a new Paragon board. Casting a mobility or subterfuge skill increases the damage of your next skill by 50% times. Here is a mobility skill, here is a subterfuge skill. So when you press Shadow Step, your Dance of Knives is now juiced, or when you press Smoke Grenade, your Dance of Knives is now juiced. That's how you should basically view it. So it is a very, very potent node for this build, and that's why we extend into it immediately. There are a lot of great nodes to pick up around here, but I've got to be efficient and get as far as I can for you guys. Just know that I do value these, we just can't get them right now. In any case, this brings us up to the glyph, which is indeed Control. You deal 10% times increased damage to slowed or chilled enemies, 20% times increased damage to stunned or frozen enemies. We're constantly slowing and chilling enemies, and we're constantly stunning and freezing specifically. We're going to need intelligence to activate this, so this is indeed an upgraded glyph. I currently have it at 16, at 15 is when it gets its first radius increase, so you want to do that to make this work. In any case, get 25 intelligence to get that active, like you see me do here. And then we move to our next board extension, which is Cheap Shot. You deal 5% times increased damage for each nearby enemy that that's CC'd, up to 25% times. If you stagger a boss, this provides the maximum bonus instantly. This is incredible. We're constantly stunning and CCing enemies as we progress through an area, so we're building up that perk really quick. But we're staggering bosses hilariously quickly in this build, so it's giving us that bonus pretty early into a fight. Again, there are many nodes around this that are worth considering, but I can't afford to get them. So we just go straight to the glyph, which is closer. While wielding a melee weapon, you just take 10% reduced damage. It's an incredible, consistent, all damage source reduction. This is one of the best DRs we have. It also increases cutthroat damage, which, yes, Dance of Knives is a cutthroat skill. So it's basically a no-brainer, but does require 40 dexterity to achieve. As you can see, I've got it over level 15 to extend the radius and make that much more easy to do. But this is the board and how I spend on it effectively to get through it to activate the legendary node and a glyph socket. But again, there's a lot here that could be worth considering. Beyond that with our future points. On our next board extension then, we have Exploit Weakness. Hitting a vulnerable enemy has a chance to increase your damage by 1% times for 25 seconds. This goes up to 25% times and then will expire after 6 seconds. So you build this up by hitting vulnerable enemies. We're constantly generating vulnerable through a variety of sources. It's a big damage bonus that is consistently triggered. For the glyph then, we have Chip. Physical damage increases the damage an enemy takes from you up to 10% times for 15 seconds. And it also increases physical damage in general. If you take a look at Dance of Knives, it is indeed a physical damage type of skill. So it's another way to increase our core damage. It requires 40 dexterity though, but this is actually at level 13, so without a radius increase, and I'm still getting it activated like so. So that's one of the more forgiving glyphs, which is nice. In any case, this is how I set up here. You'll note the path that I used to get around to it comes through Exploit for better vulnerable damage and lucky hit chance, and I snag Unassailable on the way for damage reduction from vulnerable enemies, as well as armor. Nigh on every enemy we attack is vulnerable, so that's great DR as well. On to the final extension then. As you can see, it's unfinished right now. We have No Witnesses. Your ultimate skills gain an additional 10% times damage from your damage with ultimate bonus, and grant this bonus to all skills for 10 seconds. So you press your ultimate and everything gets stronger. It's certainly a handy thing to have to make your ultimate press even more of a power spike. Here's how I effectively get to that as quick as possible while also picking up color, because attack speed is an important stat, so it gets us a little bit more of that. I will eventually work my way around to the glyph though, and for that glyph socket, I'm considering Turf. This is 10% DR against close enemies and increases your close damage too. We're pretty much circling enemies all the time, being close to them, so this should be a good option. But that's my current Paragon board setup, and as a reminder, there is tons of special nodes around here that are going to be worth picking up with the future points you get once you start to really get beyond activating legendary nodes and glyphs first. Next then, it's time for us to talk about gear, and there's a lot to say, so let's get into it. Let's start with aspects. On my helmet, I have Umbrus, which is allowing me to not have to put that skill onto my skill bar and still get the perks of that amazing skill. You could have this on your chest instead, because on my chest I've got Juggernauts, which could be on your head. This is going to give you a lot of armor, but your evade has 100% increased cooldown. This is really important. The new system is max armor is 1000, so you want to get as close to that as possible. What you're going to find as you go up into the higher and higher difficulties is that the armor is reduced by a huge number, as well as all your resistances. So every high level of torment is going to reduce that main number. So something that potently just gives you a big chunk of armor like this is amazing. And if I had a top roll on this, it'd be significantly better, wouldn't it? Still, it is a good aspect to have, and that's why we run it. For the gloves, I run a unique Fist of Fate. You're pretty much going to be running this with most rogue builds, I feel like. 300% increased damage to plenty of effects, or in general, attack speed, crit strike chance, lucky hit chance, apply a random CC to help build staggers. It's just insane. So I think this is super important and something you should be farming as soon as you can. Just like Tybalt's Will, which is a key component of making this stepping stone build work. Or rather, pushing the damage beyond what you have when you're initially using the leveling version. So again, another really important pickup. On the boots then, we have Frostbitten. It's a really nice thing to just slot on. The first part doesn't matter, it's the second part. You deal 25% times increased critical strike damage against frozen or stunned enemies, and we have freezing stuff constantly. On the weapon then, I do have a crossbow for the vulnerable damage inherent, and of course we're running Synergy still. Using an agility skill reduces the cooldown of the next sub skill by 40%, and then using a sub skill increases the damage of your next agility skill by a huge amount. So agility skill, Dance of Knives, helps with the cooldown of Smoke Grenade, which is a sub skill. Press Smoke Grenade, enhance the damage of Dance of Knives, and of course that includes many other effects we've talked about, with Smoke Grenade increasing your damage. For our weapons then, we have Edgemasters. Skills deal up to 25% times increased damage based on your available resource. You get the max benefit when you've got full resource. in this build, we're not spending energy. So since we're always full energy, that's getting its max value constantly. However, there is a rune that exists that's going to spend energy and give you a damage bonus, which is Pugilistic Reckless Sacrifice, at which point I would change this out and run something like Aspect of Retribution, which is going to increase your damage to stunned and knocked down enemies, which is pretty great. And then under that, I would consider Concussive Strikes for a chance to daze enemies and deal more damage to dazed enemies. That could be worth running instead of this unique if you do not have it, which is the Kanjar. Hits with this weapon increase your attack speed. The higher attack speed we have, the faster we spin out those Dance of Knives. So pretty amazing. Also, max life, crit strike chance, lucky hit chance, weapon mastery, all of that is pretty hard to disagree with. So if you can get that unique, absolutely go for it. On the amulet then, of course, we have Stolen Vigor. This is what's giving us that unstoppable and big damage bonus in general, since you know it's enhancing cutthroat skills massively, and this is indeed a cutthroat skill. For the rings then, we have Star Shards, which is why we're spending combo points on Dance of Knives, pretty important. This is of course something we're going to drop though when we go to the Victimize build beyond this. Finally, Clandestine Circle, gain levels to your agility and subterfuge skills, so it's increasing the potency of Dance of Knives and Smoke Grenade, pretty amazing in one item. And that's the aspects. Let's talk about affixes next. On your defensive items, which is going to be your helmet and your chest, you want dexterity, max life, probably armor, if not a specific resistance. As I've been saying with the difficulty levels, your resistances and your armor are going to get chunked out and reduced the higher torment you go. You're going to be farming in torment 2 or 3. So your armor is going to take a hit or even a bigger hit, and so are your resistances, which means resistances matter on your affixes. You can now get all resistances as an affix, which is really nice, or higher numbers for specific ones. So if you're low on, say, cold resistance, that could be something worth considering. As you can see, it's my highest one. But none of these say 70%, which is an issue. In combat, I'm actually getting a lot of perks, like say the element resistance from Blade Shift on other sources, so my resistances are actually higher than this in combat. But it's something you need to think about and manage as best you can. If you're lacking something in particular, consider it for a defensive affix. So you'll see on my chest piece, we have dexterity and armor, but we have Dark Shroud levels, which is pretty amazing. You can't get that everywhere, but where you can get it, it is very valuable. It increases the damage reduction you're getting per Dark Shroud, so that stacks up more and more, becoming even more potent as a DR source. So pretty important affix to get. If not, max life or something will be fine. We got to change things on the uniques, so let's look at the boots. Dexterity, max life, and one of the resistances we need. This is where you could actually get some levels to Dance of Knives though, so that'd be great here if you can. For the amulet then, we have dexterity, attack speed, and cooldown reduction, all amazing. Out of those, I would say attack speed is the most valuable. There aren't many passives you can get though. The most important one I would say is Frigid Finesse to increase the damage you're dealing to frozen and chilled enemies. After that, I'd be looking for things like Malice and Exploit to further increase my damage, but I just haven't been able to find them myself yet. For the rings then, we have dexterity, max life, and damage here. And then we have dexterity, attack speed, and a chance to make enemies vulnerable on this one. Ideally, I'd have dex and attack speed on both these rings. And then the third option could be a lot of different stuff, but critical strike chance would also be a great pick. Finally, for the weapons then, we have dex, max life, and vuln dam. And then on our sword, we have dexterity, max life, and damage. So that's affixes. What about tempering? On the helmet, I have lucky hit chance to cause a freeze, helping me maintain that damage increase that provides beyond the imbuement itself. This is a really important temper as we transition into the poison and victimize version of this build. So a high value temper to get. However, definitely consider the defensive option of armor increase and max life. You're going to need a lot, like I have on my chest. We can't do anything to the uniques, so on the boots, there it is, a chance to freeze again. On the weapon, we've got cutthroat damage on this, and you'll see again on this ring, cutthroat critical strike chance. It's hard to go wrong when you pick the cutthroat temper. There's 4 relatively good options, but ideally in this setup, we'd want damage per Dark Shroud Shadow. Get many of those and you're going to get the biggest raw damage increase. The problem is when you're tempering that. So you can see under that temper, it's 1 of 3. Smoke grenade size is not great, and damage on next attack after entering stealth is significantly worse than useless. So you're going for a 1 out of 3 chance when you go for that, whereas the cutthroat finesse, it's hard to go wrong. So depending on what your current situation is and how much you want to commit, it's It's your choice to make on all of those options. You can see I made that choice on my bow, on my sword, and on my rings as well. You can see I failed the temper on this ring. So that's a crossbow. We also want to look at the sword because I have chance for Dance of Knives to deal double damage. This is nice because since we're doing raw damage, that's actually relevant damage increase. You'll find that under Agile Augments. Chance for Flurry, chance for Dance of Knives, chance for Dash. What's interesting is that they changed this from the PTR. Used to be chance for Dance of Knives to send an extra knife, which is honestly significantly better and would have been amazing for the Victimize build. I think they've intentionally dropped that and changed it to deal double damage to nerf the Victimize build, but it works great for our leveling and stepping stone setup. But I didn't find that in the patch notes, which is really weird. So heads up on that one. So that's the weapon. Let's look at the temper for the amulet, which I ended up getting damage per Dark Shroud on. Again, for the ring, I chose to go for the easier one, the Cutthroat skills. And then on the other ring, I tried to go for the Dark Shroud increase, but I failed and got Smoke Grenade size instead. So that's tempering. In terms of masterworking, it's whatever's relevant to you, but I wouldn't commit too hard to it since, you know, we're planning on going Victimized long term. You can see I did 4 out of 12 onto my weapon, and that's all I've done. Then it's time to talk about gems. As you can see, we've got dexterity increases in the armor, whatever resistances I'm currently needing the most of in the jewelry, and then other weapons, vulnerable damage, just to maximize that output. Then we have runes, which is an awkward one. You kind of just get what you get while you're leveling, and even in the mid to end game process I'm currently in, I'm struggling to get what I want. Like, you can see what runes I've got. It's far from a lot, and I don't have the ideal one that I wanted. So I just happen to have the Barbarian's Challenging Shout, which helps a bit of DR when that procs, and I just happen to have reduce your active cooldowns by 0.1 seconds, which is quite nice. For the offering generators, it's whatever's relevant and effective for you. I've got Cast an Ultimate Skill, which I'm doing as often as I can with Shadow Clone, but then I've also got Cast a Skill with a cooldown, which is basically everything, so I'm getting a lot of offering from that. Like I said in the aspect section though, the Quacks rune that allows you to use the next non-basic skill to spend all primary resource, giving you a 100% increased damage bonus, is pretty insane. That combined with Yul, meaning cast a skill with a cooldown and get offering, they synergize incredibly well. That's what I'm aiming for. But obviously I've not been able to find them, so hopefully you'll get lucky. So as a reminder, if you do get that rune and find yourself using it, don't run Edgemaster's Aspect that increases your damage based on what resource you have. In that case, I consider Retribution and Concussive Strike aspects. What about Mercenaries? Well, it's the same as when I was leveling. I'm still using Rahir. He has Valiance, which tanks some damage that I would take. It knocks down enemies, which is a damage bonus for me, and also Unstoppable. Ground Slam is an AoE slow that's great, but when we take it to Inspiration, Ground Slam is a damage increase too. We also get Element Resistance, all elements from him. And Bastion is amazing. It generates a shield that means we're taking significantly less damage while standing in it, as well as a bit of Unstoppable. And then with Inspiration, it also is another damage bonus while we're standing in it. So it's incredible. For the reinforcement, we have Vayana, the Berserker. And I'm using specifically Bloodthirst because every 22 seconds she basically shows up and gives me 10% attack speed, which is wonderful. So that's the basic mercenary setup. But yeah, that finally brings us to the end of this build overview. If you've been playing Dance of Knives from my leveling build, you'll find this play is very similar. You don't have to worry too much about generating Unstoppable intentionally because, you know, our key passive is kind of giving us that from our aspect on our amulet. So Tibalt's Will is kind of always going. All we're really doing is the same combo as always. Setting up our combo points by using Blade Shift and running through enemies regularly to achieve that permanent state, applying Smoke Bomb to the elites and pack of enemies we want to smash, pressing Cold Imbuement, and then spinning as long as we can. Whenever we want to do as much burst as possible, right before we do that Dance of Knives, we just before that pop Shadow Clone and then go to town. You'll see though, specifically against bosses, that I am spamming Smoke Grenade as much as I can. This builds up a lot of days, which ultimately leads to stagger. And when we hit the stagger from stuff like our Paragon and other effects, we get massive damage bonuses. So when you're dealing with a boss, you want to try to build up stagger as fast as possible and then burst it down with, say, your ultimate and everything else in that moment. But yeah, it still plays very similar to the leveling build, just more effectively. I hope this overview gave you all the information you needed to kind of build this stepping stone adjustment from the leveling build. But again, I will be back soon to discuss the Victimize build, which will be a lot more gear dependent, but by then you should be ready, and will really show off how silly Dance of Knives can get in Season 6. Until then, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thank you for watching, I'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.